Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 55. I am your host, Barney Smith of storycomic.com, and we are welcoming back our good friend and acclaimed sci-fi and comic book author, Mike Luoma. Mike, we were just checking it out. You were on episode 8 last year, and needless to say, things were winding up a bit as the world goes. Last March or April when we talked, and here we are, almost a year later. We're still here, man.
Yeah, still going. We're all little pink Energizer bunnies, you know. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Cabin fever has reached whole new levels. It's incredible.
There was a word, I can't remember. It was a Finnish word called. I'd have to look it up, and I'll link it in the show notes. It basically means like sustained, long-term, like hanging in there, kind of like there's a word for it for like long winters, and
I'm sure the Finns would have that word. Luoma is a Finnish name. My dad's family are all Finnish, so.
Oh, really? Okay. Yep. Wow. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, the Finns are kind of gloomy people. Let me just say. Well, you know, you don't see the sun half a year. It kind of does that to you.
Yeah. And as of this recording, I'm one of those people that will I count the minutes of extra daylight we have compared to December 21st, which was the shortest day of as of this recording, today on January 28th, we have 50 extra minutes of daylight. So it's creeping up. So,
you know, I'm just waiting for when that sunset goes past 5 p.m. We're almost there.
Yeah.
In the Champlain Valley where I am. So it's like, watching it. Come on, get past 5. Let's do it.
Well, I think next Monday. Yeah.
I know the other thing I like to do is go out and lately over the last year or so, I've been checking out a lot of stonework, and you can't do that when it's covered with snow and the days are short. So I'm looking forward to longer days and less snow. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so let's chat about that. That's been, it's like, I follow you on Patreon, and I subscribe to your YouTube channel. I have a great time, following your work, and yeah. So this is where did this passion come from of stonework? We'll pull up your website here. So yeah, talk a bit about this. This is interesting.
Well, it's actually pandemic related because I've been studying a lot about Native American earthworks, stoneworks, mounds, geometric earthworks. There's a lot of them down in like the Ohio Valley. There's some all over the eastern seaboard, and I wanted to take a trip and go see these places last summer. That was what I was like gearing up for, was a road trip. Okay. And then of course the pandemic hit. And at the same time the pandemic hit, I had started to notice that people were researching the stoneworks around New England, not just as possible colonial things, or as some people had in the past said, maybe Celtic or Viking stone, ruins.
Right.
There were people saying that these were maybe Native American. And so with that in mind, I started to check out a lot more sites, and not being able to travel to other places, I started to look around Vermont. So I went to some of the chambers that are in southern Vermont, like Calendar 1 and Calendar 2. I read an amazing book called Manitou, which is by James Maver and Byron Dix. And these guys were active in the 80s. Book came out in 1989, and they were some of the first people to say, some of the stonework may be Native American, and it may have astronomical alignments. And so it's been kind of an awakening to see all this history that's all around us. And the more places I go, the more things I'm finding, things I don't expect to find. Sometimes I'll just be on a hiking trip and step off the trail for social distancing, and all of a sudden I'm discovering new stoneworks. It's pretty amazing. So I started doing videos because people like to see what I was putting out there. And I've started my own Facebook group called Ancient Stone Mysteries of New England.
Huh.
So it's kind of just taken on a life of its own. The more I've done, the more people are interested in it, and the more people are telling me about places I should come see, which is cool.
And so how much of this was the stonework here? What have you learned over the past year of discovering things that actually even surprised you?
Well, I've found things that I still can't quite explain, which is pretty cool. There's a ridge in the south part of the Chittenden County area called Raven Ridge or Moncton Ridge. It's right in the north part of Moncton and where Heinsberg and Charlotte come together. And that ridge, when I was hiking it this summer, that's one of the places I had to step off the trail because people were hiking and, you know, socially distant from each other. And some people aren't good about wearing masks when they should be. It's a peeve. But, you know, so I stepped off the trail and I started to notice that the ridge itself was worked, like it had been shaped. There were stones added to it. And it appears to me, and this is still very preliminary, but it appears to me that it may be a sea serpent effigy. Like they turned the whole top of this ridge into a sea serpent. And it has a really striking natural feature called an autocline. And that's a fold in the rock where the rock actually like one set of plates hit another set of plates and the rock folded up and over. So it's a curled part of the rock, and they call it the oven because it kind of looks like an old stone oven, but it's a natural feature. But I think that the Native Americans considered that the mouth of the serpent there at the ridge. So I'm just starting the research on that. I've also gone to sites in Massachusetts because my mom still lives down there and that's where I grew up. And a lot of this research began with guys in Massachusetts going out and discovering that some of these stoneworks and stone walls were more complex and had effigy works woven into them and such. I've actually gone out in places in Massachusetts and found things at sites where things have been located already. I found things that hadn't been discovered yet, which was pretty cool. That happened a few months back. I was down at a place called Gates Pond near my hometown, and I was looking for some things that somebody else had posted on about 11 years ago or 9 years ago. And then I found this wall and I followed it along the swamp, and it looked to me to be a Native American construction based on the fact of how it was constructed. There's, different techniques and different styles. And once you eliminate the European styles, you start to see this kind of single row stonework that has shapes and curves and sort of sinuous lines to it. And some of them zigzag, but not in a sort of geometric sort of way, but more in a sinuous sort of way. Right. And so these walls almost resemble snakes. And there's some theories that think that Native Americans may have built these as fire breaks because they did kind of controlled burns to keep the forests in check and make it easier to travel through. They did a lot more than we know now. And we're learning all the time how much more complex their society was and how much they lived in harmony with the land and yet used the land and, did a kind of agricultural lifestyle that was really harmonious and wasn't as destructive as our Western ways have been. So there's been some cool things that I've found along the way. That's for sure.
And so once you started doing this and researching a lot of these rock formations, what have you been able to, as you said, you started a Facebook group, even found a lot of like-minded folks, and have you found any like academic researchers who've been able to help you guide you in certain directions as well?
Yeah, there isn't a lot of them. It's not an accepted thing in mainstream archaeology. I find the Massachusetts historical preservation archaeologists particularly are hostile to this idea. Really? Because it gets in the way of development, and they seem to be very friendly with developers down there. Yeah. Right. But there is an archaeologist at Bridgewater University in Massachusetts named Curtis Hoffman. He has a book out, came out in 2018 called Stone Prayers. And I've been in touch with him now. He's been cataloging sites up and down the eastern seaboard. And since his book came out, he's added like 700 sites to his index, and just added that new wall I found in Massachusetts to the index last month. So
wow.
That's kind of cool. I'm starting to report sites to him. There's also another group called the New England Antiquities Research Association, or NERA, and they've been going since the 60s, and they're amateurs, avocational archaeologists, and people who are interested in this sort of field work. And those guys I was mentioning earlier, Maver and Dix, who wrote the book Manitou, were members of this group, NERA. So I've become a member of that group. Just had our first Zoom meeting with them last weekend, which was cool. But I'm starting to report stuff to them as well, and they have a database of things that they've discovered over the last, 50 or so years. So,
and how does that work? Like when you find something, is it almost like peer reviewed, where you'd say you have to take picture of and at what point is it like how would you determine, like how like you and others would determine like it's geologically formed, or this is actually, there's ways to tell that it was actually intentionally made?
It's so young right now,
right?
And there's so few people that are doing this that it's very preliminary. There's very few peers to review what we're doing, but because there are peers out there, like I mentioned, there's that Curtis Hoffman is the archaeologist from Bridgewater University. He's got a book out. He also participates on a blog called Rock Piles, which is out of Massachusetts. A guy from Concord, Mass, has been doing this for 25 years, something more than that. He doesn't belong to NERA, though, because he likes to tell people where sites are, and NERA believes you have to keep the site secret because you don't want vandals and other people to do damage.
Okay.
And that's part of the worry too, is that I want to share what I'm finding with people, but I don't want people going there and taking things away.
Right.
The only thing I take is pictures.
Right.
And when I do, what I do is I'll share the details on that with an archaeologist, tell them where they are, because he's not actively disseminating that information.
Yeah.
And then when I share it on Facebook, I make sure there's no identifying information, unless it's a public place like Raven Ridge that I was mentioning earlier, that I gave the details on because it's publicly open. There aren't things that you can remove, so to speak. And like I say, that is a very preliminary thing as well, where I actually wrote to the Vermont State archaeologist about that and have not gotten any responses to my emails from him. So maybe he thinks I'm a kook. I don't know. Yeah. I also wrote to this the dean of Ohio archaeology. He's been working on mounds, and he's an authority on their serpent mound. There's a prominent serpent mound in Ohio. His name is Dr. Brad Lepper, and Brad got back to me. He said, basically, I'm short-staffed because of the pandemic, and I can't look at what you've sent me. But watch out for pareidolia, which is our tendency to see faces and things and clouds. Right. And, we do, as humans, have a tendency to try to impose order on things. And so we do see, like faces on the fronts of cars and shapes in clouds and things like that. And whenever I'm looking at stuff, that's one thing I have to be very careful of, is, am I just imposing my own order on it?
Right. Right.
But it's, like I said, it's such a young science, and it's so open right now. There's no real established way to get your stuff approved, and the official journals of archaeology aren't necessarily open to amateurs like me.
And this is kind of, is this also like extremely specific to like North America, or is there like, for like in other places of Europe, is there still ancient archaeology of discovering rock formations that are that people haven't either forgotten a long time ago or just haven't discovered yet?
Oh, it happens all around the world.
Okay.
Yeah, there are similar, like, beehive shaped chambers to the ones that we've seen in some places in New England, in like only Scotland, up in northern Scotland. But they don't know who built them there either.
Huh.
So, any speculation that it was Scottish people came over here and built them, well, maybe it was people that came from here and went over there and built them. We just don't know at this point, and anything more is speculation,
Right.
And it's fascinating because it is so open, and at the same time, pseudo-archaeology is a problem, because you get the people talking about ancient aliens and, coming up with really bizarre theories about exploration. And because of what I'm looking into and the fact that it's not in the norm, I get kind of lumped in with those people in a lot of cases.
The hollow earthers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so talk to us a bit about, because you said you started doing this, pull up your, check out, YouTube, like Mike Luoma, he's here. You have on here, you've made some of these videos that they're fascinating. They're extremely fascinating. And I would tell you too, this is great pandemic watching videos, because there's this calm atmosphere about it, and also too, you're actually able to explore outside while not going outside. So as a writer, are you getting inspiration from this, from like your creative hat as well, from some of the stuff that you've been seeing?
I think that it informs my stuff, I can't say that it's directly impacting it, but in general, I think what I find is that, well, in the current book, I've got an alien race that's a bit like a Native American race. So I would say that's probably a direct correlation. Although, they're their own race too, because I didn't want to be like insulting towards Native Americans.
Right.
I wanted to create something entirely new, to have an entirely new race, but I wanted them to have kind of a harmonious way of looking at things, as opposed to our Western way of looking at things.
Right.
So that there's some of that filtering into the new book, I would say.
Okay. And so how far are you on your new book? This is your Alibi Jones book.
Yeah, this is going to be probably the last of the Alibi Jones adventures, at least for now, because I'd like to see the audience grow, but at this point, it's a small but dedicated audience, and I want to wrap up what I've been telling, because Starseeds of Earth, the last novel that I put out this past May, that kind of leaves things open, and I want to not put a bow on it, but bring things back to Earth, so to speak, because the last novel ended up who knows where, actually. I threw Alibi and the Hornet's Nest out into the middle of nowhere, and part of the new novel is them figuring out where that is and how they get back, and part of the novel is also what happens here since they've disappeared. So it's kind of grand in scope and scale. There's even some mythic elements that I'm tying in. In the Starseeds of Earth, I introduced a character who called himself the Archmage that Alibi ran into under a Vermont mountain. And you're going to find out who that Archmage is, because he is actually somebody out of like mythic history.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Right.
And so he's involved in this, although telling you how would be giving too much away.
And do you feel, because as a writer and you're tying up your series, is there any point where you have to, at this point, do you have to reread your books to find out there's some story seeds that you planted that you haven't gone there? Are you making sure that there's all loose ends are tied? Or are you deliberately leaving some open for future installments?
Well, I'm going to leave some open deliberately, and some I'm sure will just be left open accidentally. But also the thing about having a great and dedicated like core of readers is that people ask you questions all the time about your books, and they're like, hey, what about this? And like, so Starseeds of Earth began with a character coming back, Mark Edwards, who hadn't been around since the Vatican Assassin books.
Wow. Okay.
And Alibi's down on this Vermont mountain looking for a chamber, stone chambers. I was actually writing about them before I stepped into one because I was fascinated by them, you know.
Okay.
And I had kept trying to get people to take me to see one, but I hadn't managed to line that up yet. Once I wrote about them, I started to be able to go see them, which I don't want to, you know, speculate too much on coincidences or anything, but that was pretty cool. The other thing that was weird is in the book, in the Alibi book, he's trying to get to this chamber and he has to go through all these blackberry bushes and brambles and thorns. Well, it turns out that's like real life.
Really?
In real life, when you're going to these places, a lot of times you have to go through like thickets and brambles. And I was like, I didn't know that was real. I was making that up. I wish that wasn't real. But so, yeah, I brought that character, Mark Edwards, back to be the guy who owned the land that Alibi was on in Vermont. And he had retired from his job on the moon, which is where we had known him in Vatican Assassin. But the reason I brought him back was because a couple of readers were like, hey, whatever happened to Mark Edwards? And I was like, you know, that's a good question. Yeah. Oh, that's what happened to him, you know, and like all of a sudden he kind of interceded. His character just popped back up. Some of these characters take on lives of their own, you know, and so they're like, hey, I'm right here. This is what I'm doing. Oh, okay. I'll connect back up with you. So I don't know. I'll miss some things, you know, continuity wise, but I'm sure readers will probably be asking questions and that might lead to a new book down the road.
Right. And you feel as like, and this is, that you feel like this is good. This is going to be a good, you know, like was this always your plan to have that many volumes to Alibi Jones?
I didn't know I was going to have this many, actually. I thought, you know, maybe there would be the first 3 that I wrote. I didn't even know if it would take off enough for me to write a second book, though, because I'm a DIY guy. I put out all my own stuff. And so I have to be honest with myself if something isn't working, which is what I'm doing with this current run on Alibi. It's saying, okay, if I want to expand readership, I've got to write a different subject, a different book, different characters so that people can step into it.
Right.
But at the same time, I kept writing the Alibi books because there was a readership and they did take off and people did enjoy them.
Right.
And a lot of people who read the Vatican Assassin books came through into the next series. It seemed to be pretty seamless. And I was trying to also write Alibi Jones comics and books at the same time to see if I could like cross-pollinate those audiences. But I found that was the harder thing to do. I could get Vatican Assassin readers to read Alibi's prose, but I couldn't get Alibi Jones comic book readers to read Alibi prose. And I still have a hard time getting Alibi's prose readers to read comics. Honest to God, it's a strange thing. And
so you're still, and your plan is still to produce the Alibi Jones comic books in successions to catch up to the Alibi Jones book series?
No, actually, I'm putting a lid on the Alibi comics too for now.
Really? Okay.
I think I may do a treasury or a compilation because Alibi's stories are all short stories, so they don't become a graphic novel,
right?
Except in name only. You know, I could put them together as an anthology that would be kind of like an Alibi graphic novel. And I've thought of doing that because there is one story that isn't available in an Alibi comic. And that's the one that was in Always Punch Nazis, the Alibi Jones story, The Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with what's recently gone on, I just made that story free on my website. So if you go to glowinthedarkradio.com, you'll see at the top of the page there, it says read Alibi Jones, The Legacy. And you can, oh, great. Yeah. That's that story that previously has only been available in Always Punch Nazis. But it's Alibi Jones punching Nazis, or because Juan Carlos drew it that way, kicking Nazis. It's like, Juan Carlos, how come they're not punching? He's like, what? It's a kick punch.
That's amazing.
That series is amazing. Actually, the Always Punch Nazis series, they just released their third book in the anthology. And proud to have been a part of that and to, you know, be standing up against fascism, basically. So.
Right. Yeah. And And also, what else? And this past year since we talked as well, you just also had your 15th anniversary edition of Vatican Assassin come out, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's been fun. That just happened in December. December, I think 15th or so marked the 15th anniversary. I originally put it out just as I was turning 40. So yeah, just 55. Woo!
Woo!
Yeah.
And I was going to say, and what is your what's different in the 15th? Like, so for somebody that might own Vatican Assassin, what would they find different in the 15th anniversary edition?
Well, there was a hope when I first started working on this that I was going to have 10 new interior illustrations from Federico Guillen, but then his father got COVID,
okay,
and so he was forced to abandon the project on that level. But he did finish the painting, the cover painting. So unfortunately, it doesn't have a lot that's new, although I did update the text and make sure that everything continuity-wise now matches, because there were a few things that, I don't know, changed along the way that I didn't realize changed along the way. First novel. And the thing that I really had a lot of fun making a special audiobook version of this, where I was able to get about 7 friends of mine from the world of podcasting and audiobook narration to act as guests, as cameo voices in the audiobook. So there's actually guest voices playing some of the characters in the Vatican Assassin 15th Anniversary Edition audiobook.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So I've got like my classiest one would probably be Scott Zigler. Scott is a New York Times best-selling author who came up through the audiobooks ranks as a podcaster like me, and he was kind enough to agree to do the voice of Daniel McIntyre, which he's great at. And I've got Dave Robison, who has an amazing voice. His website for his voice work is Buttery Man Voice. And he's doing the light, and he is just so like champion, it's just like so perfect. It's so much fun. And I've got Keith Hughes doing the voice of Cardinal Anderson, the great Veronica Jaguar, who's an amazing audiobook narrator. She does Meredith McIntyre. There's Starla Hutchton, who is another great narrator. She's got the voice part for Nita Bendix. And another author and podcaster whose books I enjoy, Paul Cooley, is doing the voice of Drex the Pilot.
Okay. And
John Moreau, who's another podcaster and author who I enjoy, he's got the voice of Mr. Wentworth. So it's spread through all throughout the book. You hear these different voices in the audiobook version, and it was a lot of fun to put together. These people, all friends of mine, coming to my aid.
So having like authors that might be listening to this or watching this would ask is like, how did you do? Because you self-publish, how were you able to actually also produce an audiobook of that? And is that audiobook, and that's available on Amazon as well as an audiobook? How did you get that together?
Well, I've been doing audiobooks since I've been doing books, because I've been podcasting my books.
Right.
So I began originally just putting out a chapter a week, and that was a way to get my book out in front of more people and generate interest in it. And then audiobooks started to become a thing. So I put them all together, and it was kind of like my own work turned into narrating other books for other people. And if you're an author and you want to get involved, there's like a backdoor site for Amazon and Audible called ACX.
Okay.
So ACX.com is where you'd go if you're an author and you're even a self-publisher or small press. You can go there and hire a narrator and actually have them produce an audiobook for you. Although it's going to cost a bit of money. It's a whole new format. It's like hiring a inker, or hiring a colorist, or an editor. You're going to have to pay some money because you're creating a whole different version of a book in a new format. I also come from the world of radio. So my background allowed me to do this stuff and give me the background technically to be able to do it myself.
Right. And it was that something like almost as you say, the level of self-publishing is, could you just use like like you did using the podcast platform to then split up? Because I also subscribe to Glow in the Dark Radio, which is always and that is, you're on, I think last year we talked about it, you were knocking on episode 700, was it?
No. I'm actually about to hit episode 600 like in a day or two. I'll be making the 600th episode. Yeah.
Oh no, maybe it was episode 500. Yeah, I remember it was
500. Yeah.
Yeah, it was I remember listening. So I mean, and that just goes to show that you've been doing this for quite a long time. And would that be like an option for someone that has that finding somebody who has a good radio voice to, turn it into like that as a podcast, or reading it chapter by chapter? But like you said, you can't upload that to Amazon then, right?
Well, a podcast is different from an audiobook.
Right. Okay.
Interestingly enough, Amazon has just started carrying podcasts.
Oh, wow.
So my podcast is now on Amazon. So you can say, Alexa, play Glow in the Dark Radio. Hold on a sec. Alexa, stop.
Dude, I got the headphones on, so they didn't hear. Mine didn't hear you say it.
Yeah, but you can just say to her to play Glow in the Dark Radio, and she will, which is cool now. Yeah. Whoa, hey! I thought of that as I was saying it. I was like, wait.
No, everybody that's been listening to this or watching it will have to then make sure their Alexas didn't light up too. So
yeah. But no, the books themselves, you'd have to have a complete book to get it up on Amazon and on Audible as an audiobook. Okay. That's the only way they take those. So.
Right. Okay. All right. And also that, as you mentioned this, this past year, you had your 15th anniversary. You're working on your final Alibi Jones books, doing a lot of research and discovery of, ancient, stone structures. What else have you been up to this during the year of the pandemic?
Man, trying to find ways to keep myself entertained so I don't lose my mind. I put an interesting thing together that people who are comic fans and audiobook fans might find interesting. Last month, I took the images from Alibi Jones comic book short story.
Okay.
Called Alibi Jones In Over His Head, that Juan Carlos Quitorio illustrated.
Okay.
And I sliced up all the images so that, they were freed from their panels. And then I made a video of it where I put the images to the audiobook narration, because I've actually adapted all of my comic book short stories to audiobook form too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So with this new version, what I'm calling an illustrated audio piece, or just illustrated audio, you can watch these images go by and listen to me tell the story. So that's on my YouTube channel as well. If you go to the YouTube channel, you can watch Alibi Jones In Over His Head. And it's basically an illustrated audiobook where I'm narrating the story, but you get to see Juan Carlos's images come up in sequential order there.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this is it right here.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this
was had a blast doing this
at first, and then it becomes like, what have I gotten myself into? and once I start something, I got to finish it. So, I did.
Right. And what kind of format did you use for your editing software for this? How did you put this together?
I've been using some free software that I actually ended up buying, like a licensed version of, called VSDC, that works on the PC.
Okay.
And I learned a lot doing videos for WBKM, for the radio station that I'm a part of.
Okay.
Because we started doing WBKM virtual in studio videos of indie artists playing their songs in their bedrooms and in apartments. We started doing that in 2018. Now, all of a sudden, you know, with the pandemic, everybody's been doing just that, which has been kind of weird to see. But I started making videos like that a couple years ago. And then having taught myself how to make those videos for WBKM, I started making the videos that I've been putting out about the stone chambers. Mm-hmm. Those stone chamber videos have gotten great reaction, so I keep doing them. Right. And I've learned more doing those. And it's like each of these things feeds back on the other. And I try to keep each of my, you know, different creative things sort of cross-pollinating and feeding each other. And what have I learned from this that I can apply here, you know?
Right. What, as you know, as a creator and as a content creator, as an author, what do you do to stay inspired? Or there been days where, you know, you're just like, I'm just not going to worry about it. Like, how do you make sure that you keep that motivation moving over for you?
I think these days you have to be really forgiving.
Yeah.
You know, I think you have to be forgiving of yourself, and you have to allow yourself to have days where you get nothing done.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, we all have to be kind to ourselves right now.
Right.
Because it is such a hard time. So I try not to be too much of a taskmaster. I still hold myself to a high standard as far as productivity goes. I like to be productive. I like to get stuff out. But at the same time, I think if I've learned anything, it's over this last year to be a little kinder to myself and not strive too hard.
Right. And do you have any fear of any issues of burnout because of, like, say, for instance, like your podcast and your Patreon page, which we can talk about in a little bit, where you feel like there's an obligation that you have to keep producing? Or have you seen that you haven't seen that demand from your readers or your listeners?
I think there's more of an expectation on my part because I feel like I've made a promise to people in starting this kind of thing.
Right.
So when, like, for example, with the Alibi Jones book being the next one will be the last, that book's not going to be out for another 8 months easily.
Right.
So I'm looking way down the road when I look at stuff. If I was going to stop the podcast or stop doing stuff for my Patreon, I think I would have to do so with, like, a lot of warning, just because I feel like in both those cases, what I'm doing is kind of engaged in a promise that it's going to be coming back.
Right.
And that's the way I look at it. And I feel like I'd be letting myself down if I didn't continue it. And having done it now for, you know, since 2006, it's this is all, you know, in September of 21, it will be 15 years of the podcast.
Wow.
You know, never mind 600 episodes. It'll be 15 years of doing it. Having stuck through periods where I have been in that, like, oh my God, what am I doing this for?
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. This sucks. This is dirt. You know, it's like there are hard times you get to that point, but I've learned if you just get through it, it's rewarding to get to the other side. And then you're on the other side and you look back and you go, thank God I didn't give up then.
Right. Right.
Yeah. You know, so there's a certain amount of momentum and a certain amount of history that just keeps pushing you.
Right. And let's talk a bit about, cause I don't think last year we talked in detail about your Patreon page. As you know, myself as someone who's a member of your Patreon, I love the stuff that you're putting out. And talk to us a bit about some of your levels on here. Your tiers. You got your igniters, your illuminators, and your radiants. Do you want to talk to people who are interested that follow you? That what would they be getting for this for each one of these subscriptions?
Well, the $2 level, I started as kind of just almost like a membership level. If you like the podcast and you want to support it, here's a way to do so. And when I first was starting Patreon, I wasn't sure anybody was going to do it, like actually sign up. But it was through a few conversations at Balticon over the years with a couple of different authors and podcasters. They were like, look, just do it because people want to support what you do. And this gives them an opportunity to do so. So that's where that level came from. And then I thought, well, maybe it will start a $5 level, which will be for people that really want to commit, want to help keep the lights on, keep paying for the podcast. And, maybe I can give them some extra stuff like an extra book or, free stuff here and early releases, things of that nature.
Okay.
So that's what the $5 level became. And then I figured, well, maybe one or two people might want to do the $10 thing. So I created a $10 level, and I said, for that, you'll get a special gift. And there's only been a couple of people who have done that. What I found is that the people who have done that have been like, you know what? I don't need a special gift. I'm just doing this because I want to support what you're doing.
Right.
Which has been awesome. And I don't really differentiate too much between what I give all the levels, but there are some things that the $5 and $10 level people will get that the $2 level people don't.
Right.
But that's rare. It's you get pretty much a lot at $2.
Well, yeah. Now it looks like you got to update it because it says almost 500 shows and counting. Now you got to have it say almost 600 now and counting. So.
I'll have to fix that, man. It's been a while. God, sometimes this DIY stuff is just a matter of chasing your own tail through the internet, Oh, gotta update that. Gotta update this.
So, it's like, always the optimist. I mean, we're here in Vermont. We're the first state to actually have more people vaccinated than who have actually got COVID. So, thumbs up in, Vermont right there. So, we're rounding the corner. What were some of the things that you were surprised by yourself over this past year?
Surprised by?
Yeah.
Maybe how little it changed my routine. I'm not that social a person, and I had already started doing a lot of work at home.
Right. Okay.
So it's like all of a sudden everybody else had to live in Mike world.
Yeah.
I think the disappointing thing has just been the how much I've missed traveling to see my mom,
right.
And to see family members. And I think the surprising thing was discovering all the stonework, because my plan had been to go on this trip because I thought I had to go to the Midwest to see things that, were ancient Native American workings in this country. And now it turns out, no, there's probably stuff right around the corner that you don't even know about.
Right. And are you planning on, I mean, it's like, is there, I don't think I specifically asked you this, and I asked you, were you inspired by it or were you utilizing it? Specific things are doing this. So this is going to be something you're going to be creating more and more, like for instance, with the stonework piece. Is there any ability to add this to any Patreon level, or is this kind of its own side thing where is there going to be any intermingling with any pieces, not getting inspired by it for your creative work, but is there any additions, like you're going to write a book specifically about this, or is there things that you're going to do specific to this based off of things that's not really interconnected with Alibi Jones and Vatican Assassin?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think so. I think that if I do, I think I'm definitely inspired by this, so I'm going to keep at it. And more and more people are coming forth and telling me about things, and I'm having more and more interesting conversations. I just had an interesting conversation with a stonemason who knows a lot about historical stonework around Vermont, trying to get more of a perspective on that. But then it turned out he's also talked to people about possibly ancient stonework on their property, and he's going to get back to me with some of that. I have just found with the stone structures and the stonework research that it has just added, it just keeps adding to itself. It just keeps happening. So for me, it's what's going to happen next. I don't know. I'm going to keep following this and see where it goes. I've written articles that I publish on Medium, and I write pop culture stuff a lot of times, but I've started writing now about the stoneworks. And one of my most popular articles was just about the ancient stone mysteries of New England.
Okay, yeah, and that's right. You mentioned, you do write some stuff, and talk to us a bit about some of these pop culture articles that you've been writing for Medium.
Well, I just had one that came out this week on Babylon 5 returning.
Really? Okay.
So Babylon 5 it isn't unfortunately returning with new shows, but they have brought Babylon 5 to the HBO Max platform. So if you've never seen Babylon 5, you can now watch the entire 5-year arc, and it's a 5-year novel for television. So it was like the first one of these overarching storylines. Like the guys from Lost and the guys from Battlestar Galactica, they learned from Babylon 5. There's a huge influence on both of those shows. So a lot of our current kind of television where we have these, episodic overarching stories, that all goes back just to Babylon 5. Because nobody had been doing that on American television. Up to that point, if you had a TV show, each week it kind of had to reset, so they could show them out of order, and, the reruns would make sense. So like on MASH, nobody can die. It's like they all have to be back the next week. But right. Babylon 5 was actually the first to have characters that changed and developed. Some left, some got killed. It actually set the stage for a lot of what's become the norm for TV now in this binge watching streaming age. So it's kind of neat to see Babylon 5 back. And I just wrote this huge article about that and, about how to watch it and what to look for and things like that.
Right. And you also, I remember you talked to me last year about that. You also wrote something about Guardians of the Galaxy as well, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. This is, there's a publication on Medium called Fanfare. And they've been the ones that have published my stuff on there. So I've published an entire history of the Guardians of the Galaxy from the comics. That's older stuff, and I'm working on something now about the Mandalorian.
Oh, okay.
And how to watch the proper episodes from the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels to get the background for Mandalorian.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. So we haven't talked. So yeah, I think last year we talked. It was season 1 already came and left. So what did you think of season 2?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I was really pleased. I thought it was really interesting to see them bring characters out of the animated series like Ahsoka Tano and Bo-Katan. Mm-hmm. And to have Katie Sackhoff play Bo-Katan when she voiced the character as a voice actor, oh, that was awesome. To see that character come alive like that in a literal sense was really cool.
Right.
But then to see Luke Skywalker at the end, I was just like, no shit. No. That brought out the 11-year-old me who saw Luke in Star Wars in the movie theaters. It's like that was killer.
There's a really, you check it out on YouTube. They actually have that whole fight scene with Luke Skywalker with, I don't know if you've seen it or not, with We Need a Hero playing in the background. It fits. It's funny how well it fits to it. It's almost like Dark Side of Oz, where they actually cues up perfectly to Gloria. It's not Gloria Gaynor. Who sings that? We Need a Hero. I can't remember her name offhand.
For a hero. I don't know who is that.
Calling out for a hero. Yeah. Well, anyway, so but check
Bonnie
that
Tyler.
Out.
I don't know.
maybe Bonnie Tyler. So check that out. That was that's a really fun video.
I also think they did a neat homage to the movie Sorcerer. I don't know if you're familiar with that. There's a William Friedkin movie. The guy who made The Exorcist made this, okay. And it was these guys were transporting nitroglycerin through the jungle and over crazy bridges and stuff. And Tangerine Dream did the music, and it's like boom, 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 boom. It's really suspenseful. But then in the Mandalorian, they had that one where they're transporting
right
the stuff, And you know, they're watching the levels go up and down on the dash of how like it's getting, you know, ready to blow in the back. Well, that was a lot like this sorcerer, where they're driving through the jungle and they've got like a glass of water on the dash that they're watching, because they know if it starts to move too much, the nitroglycerin's going to blow up in the back.
Oh,
and I just thought it was kind of like, you know, they're paying an homage here. The cool thing about Sorcerer is it came out at the same time as the original Star Wars movie, and it was supposed to be a huge hit, but Star Wars eclipsed it.
Oh, wow.
So there's connections there, man. There are connections.
Yeah, they must have been deliberate with that. Then must have had that homage. So. But I've never seen any. Yeah, and then the Easter eggs mentioned it. But that's interesting. Cool. So yeah, we're knocking on the hour already, Mike. That was quick.
Oh, man, huh? You're kidding.
So what's it? Tell people where they can find you.
glowinthedarkradio.com or mikeluoma.com. Probably the easiest way. But I'm also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. On Facebook and Twitter, it's just /Mike Luoma, MikeLuoma. That tricky Finnish spelling, Luoma. And on Instagram, it's Glow in the Dark Radio. So.
Okay. All right. Great. And it was great. It was great chatting with you again, Mike. This was fun. We should do this. Just always check in and see what you're up to. Yeah.
Way too fast, man.
I know.
It's like, wait, let me see. Did I pimp everything? Oh, you know what? You can get my Vatican Assassin graphic novel for half price at Comixology right now.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Okay.
Since this is Story Comic, I should talk about a comic for.
Right.
You know,
see, there you go.
But yeah, so at Comixology through the 1st, it's part of their small press sci-fi sale. You can get the Vatican Assassin graphic novel, art by Christian Navarro, and color by Juan Carlos Quatordio, and lettering and everything else by me. So
excellent. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Mike.
Thank you, Barney.
Yeah, and come back anytime. This was great. I always love chatting with you.
Well, you know what? You can keep me as a backup guest. Somebody cancels, you get in touch. I'll show up and just talk.
Excellent. All right, let me hit my button on here to do the intro. So that's a new pair of headphones, isn't it, Mike?
No, I think I've had these for quite some time. So.
Really? For some reason, I remember last year you had white headphones. They just, yeah, they're nice. But I don't know. Did you have the white? I'd have to look at our previous interview. Then I think you came on. Was it episode 5?
It was pretty early. It was like February or
it was
early
like March. Yeah. I have to check that. I have to look at that. So let me say I have that there. I mean,
I've worked in radio, so I have a few pairs of headphones. It could have been a different pair.
Yeah, I think it was. You came on. Oh, okay. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You were episode 8. Wow. Okay. Look at that. Cool.